Detroit Lions, pick number 6 and pick number 18.
I went back and forth on this one a lot. I think pick number 6 would love Tyree Wilson for sure. There's no doubt in my mind he'd be a great value add. But I do think at pick 18, you can still add D-line in this class. Now, maybe not as unique, shall we say, as Tyree Wilson, but you can still add one who's a dude. But you can't add a quarterback like Anthony Richardson. You're not within striking distance. You are right now at pick 6. You can get up to pick 3 with relatively little draft capital. Brad Holmes is an aggressive GM, has been over his course of his career with Detroit Lions. You saw the move last year for Jameson Williams. That was a massive move. This isn't nearly as big a move. To get from 6 to 3, it might take just like one of those seconds to go Arizona's way. Because as I mentioned before, Arizona has the impetus to move down as well because they will still get one of the top defensive prospects more likely than not in this draft class if they do. So moving up just a little for Anthony Richardson, taking that swing of a guy who you give immediately a scenario where he doesn't have to have any pressure on him. Right. You know, it's still Goff's team. You still say it's Goff's team for the next 2 years. And I think it's a pick that's very worthwhile in what he brings to the table. And to me, gives you a high floor backup where as soon as Goff goes down, you get Benny Johnson just dialing up the run game play after play with that dominant offensive line. And all of a sudden, you don't even ask Anthony Richardson to pass. You just turn him into a glorified fullback back there. So I love the thought of just adding him to the mix and having a plan for his development and not putting any pressure on him to be the guy and just saying, Goff, these next 2 years are yours. Make the most of them because this guy's waiting in the wings. And then Myles Murphy at 18. So, like I said, you can get that edge at 6, but I think you can also get a high-end toolsy edge down somewhere at 18, whether it's Myles Murphy, whether it's someone like Nolan Smith down there at that point in the draft. I think, or even like a Kalijah Cansey. There will be a D lineman that falls to that point, and you can grab it then. I don't think unless, really Jalen Carter or Will Anderson is there on the board for you. I think in this scenario, especially though, if I draft Anthony Richardson, Myles Murphy is the guy I want. A strong, bigger defensive end that complements Aiden Hutchinson. He's the guy that can play over tight ends, play over tackles. We saw Hutchinson struggle in that kind of role this past year. Obviously, after he lost a bunch of weight, going to a senior year at Michigan, it was just not the same type of power player to really do that role. Myles Murphy can't. So I think that's a good compliment. Maybe not quite NFL ready, why he falls pick 18, but a nice developmental piece.
Yeah, I got to say,
2 big swings.
When you brought it up the last time we talked, you sold me on the idea of Detroit drafting Anthony Richardson, even to the point of trading up to 3 with Arizona and making that happen. I love that. I think that's exactly what we talked about earlier. Like, that is how you take advantage of the unusual being out of position draft spot and take a shot at something that you would have no realistic shot at otherwise. Like, if Detroit was just picking at pick 18, had no other additional ammunition, no chance, right? Their only hope would be somebody like Will Levis falling in the draft and suddenly being available like the middle of the first round. And then that's a different kind of conversation. But all of a sudden, you're sitting there at 6. It's going to take maybe that second round pick to jump to 3 and have literally the most athletic quarterback that's ever come into the NFL, who doesn't have to start day one, who can be worked on in the background while you figure out what you can do with him. Love that. I figured since it was like a dream scenario, I might as well just sit here at 6 and say the dream scenario is he falls to 6 and you can draft him anyway without having to trade away the second pick. So I'm taking Anthony Richardson at 6. That's the dream scenario for Detroit. They don't have to trade anything to Arizona. They just sit there. Richardson has enough concerns about his passing that he's available. They pounce on him. And then my pick at 18 was one of the guys you mentioned, Kalijah Cansey, coming in there and being that impact interior pass rushing guy that they just don't have on that defensive line right now.
Yeah, I love Kalijah Cansey to the Lions. I do think they need to add defense, but there is also a world. Let me throw this scenario at you, Sam, that I've been ruminating on with the Lions, and I think if I'm Brad Holmes, could be where, like, it would be a massive swing, but just hear me out.
Okay.
Pick 6 or whatever, Anthony Richardson, go up and get him. 18, Bijan Robinson. 48 in the second, Osiris Torrance, guard from Florida. You create the scariest rushing offense the NFL has ever seen with those 3 draft picks. Overnight. Overnight. That's the scariest rushing offense the NFL has ever seen. Anthony Richardson, Bijan Robinson, and the best, or if not the best, the second best offensive line in the NFL. You cannot tell me that does not intrigue you, at least a little bit, Sam.
It does. And look, pick 18 is like, that's right in the area where I am 100% fine with taking a guy like Bijan Robinson. I think his contract at that point is cheap if he ends up being a really good player. And in terms of like opportunity costs, okay, Bijan Robinson versus a Kalijah Kancey, and that's our dream scenario. I think cornerback is still in play at 18 in a way that you would feel better about than having to shoehorn one into number 6. The additions that they made in free agency, I think, gives them that kind of flexibility where they can wait. And if one of those top corners or a guy they love is available at 18, they can pounce there, but they don't have to, reach for him at 6. I like that as process. But yeah, I think Bijan should absolutely be in the mix as an option. And you're right. If you can then add a guard and try and stop that musical chairs that was going on in the interior last season, yeah, that would be a potentially terrifying offense. I like it.
Who's stopping this offense? The graphic would actually, no one. There would be no good answer for it. It would be the first time that there would probably be no one stopping that offense.
This right here. Look, you're doing the editorial work for them. That's your social clip. That's your graphic. This is all being cut out right now and being worked on.